convention starts this morning, and that's when it is ramping up. There are some couple of protests or demonstrations, I guess, that are scheduled. The chief will talk about that. There is also the parade that will be going from just across the bridge on the west side near the Q and up Carnegie. Dan will give you, I don't think media is allowed inside of the parade itself, but Dan will give you a couple of locations where you can set up your cameras or do whatever you want to do where you can interact. One of the things I want to mention, all day yesterday and even this morning, people were asking about this whole open carry thing and whether or not what our position was. I think you even asked about it yesterday. And the question came up, did we ever ask someone to suspend it for a period of time? After doing research, myself and the chief, we know that we did not have an official request to the governor's office for that. But during the planning, I think particularly over the last 2 to 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, we have these subcommittees set up, and during that subcommittee, one of those meetings, that issue was brought up and it was vetted and it was taken up the chain, and eventually it was decided that, as the governor stated, that he did not have the authority to do it. So then we went to, if he doesn't have the authority to do it, then we began to plan around what we would do if open carry occurred during the convention. So I'll answer any other questions you have after the chief. Chief.
Good morning. Not a whole lot to catch you guys up on today. There was one impromptu march yesterday afternoon. It started at East 36 in Euclid and ended at right out here at East 9th and Lakeside. Peaceful, not too many issues. You probably saw our bike patrol officers out escorting that march down along with some other uniformed officers, but that was about it for yesterday. Again, that ended peacefully, no real issues. Of course, the back and forth with the demonstrators and expressing their First Amendment rights, but that was about it. We also did have one minor arrest yesterday. A male was arrested for petty theft. A local male, I guess he had an issue with the equipment that one of our state troopers was carrying, specifically his gas mask pouch on his leg, and attempted to remove that pouch from the trooper's leg, and he was arrested for petty theft. We think that arrested male may have some mental issues. That's it. I think we have 2 marches scheduled for today. I'm not quite sure. I'll look at that schedule. And then the speakers platform started today also on Public Square. That's it.
I do have a question for the mayor.
Yes.
You mentioned, sir, open carry. Have either of you seen anyone so far with open carry? And if they do come in, are they allowed to have those guns?
Well, the chief can tell you the latter part, but yesterday there was a small demonstration with open carry. I think it was 2 or 3 people only, and the police dealt with them. But in terms of whether they're loaded or not, I don't know. Are they able? Yes. And the answer is yes, they can have it loaded.
I have a question for you. Chief, ahead of the convention, local media was told that there would be plenty of police officers patrolling the neighborhoods, but this past weekend actually turned out to be one of the deadliest of the year. There were 5 homicides this weekend, upwards of 20 people shot. I'm curious to know, were there more officers working in the neighborhoods over this past weekend?
Yes, there were. But as I stated to another outlet a few days ago, urban issues and urban crime has cycles. Sometimes we'll get a weekend with nothing at all happening, and sometimes we'll get a weekend as violent as this past weekend. But we did have plenty of officers out. Matter of fact, one of the shootings that we had near East 55th and Euclid, we actually had a car on 55th. The shooting happened a block over on Prospect, and the officers were actually right there in that area, actually heard the shots and called it out themselves and responded with other cars to that shooting.
Chief, could you clarify, I know you were asked this a couple days ago, but the open carry, what is legal for open carry, and then at what point does the person violate the law and your officers with this law?
Well, the person violates the open carry ordinance when they actually brandish that weapon or threaten someone with that weapon. The ordinance requires a person to safely handle a weapon, so you can't point it at people, you can't threaten people with it in any type of gesturing or mannerisms. So we make sure that people that open carry understand those rules, understand that part of the state law, and if they violate that, then they're subject to sanctions.
And just one more question on the heels of the tragic news from Baton Rouge. A number of departments around the country have beefed up. They're doing two-man cars, et cetera. Have you changed the way you're staffing this based on that?
Our officers have been in two-man cars since right after Dallas, the tragedy in Dallas.
Can you sort of define for us open carry and concealed carry?
I'll wait till... Open carry is like the way I'm dressed today. Your weapon out so that it's visible. Concealed carry is the weapon's not visible. For concealed carry, you need a permit in the state. Excuse me. There's a class that you have to go through. There's a shooting class, there's a written class, and you have to be certified by the county sheriff to get a concealed carry permit in the state of Ohio. Yes, sir.
Other than the two-man cars, does the Baton Rouge change?
Not for the convention. For the officers out in the neighborhoods, again, just like the tragedy in Dallas, officers are more keen to things that are happening, and our officers are told to be especially cautious during their tours. Yeah, we also, about a week before the convention kicked off, we initiated a tip line that the FBI is manning for us, and that's 1-800-225-5324. It's a see something, say something tip line. So we encourage people, 1-800-225-5324. We encourage people to make sure that they use that tip line if they see something suspicious out there in the neighborhoods or even downtown here with the convention.
Has the level of the threats or possible threats been expected or less than expected so far?
Well, there have been no real threats, either to the convention or to the city or to the Division of Police itself. Yes, sir.
Chief, tell us how you handled the protest march yesterday and how you're going to handle the events today. There did seem to be a very large police presence, and the bikes, you had horses, you had people on foot. How many law enforcement people were there at that protest yesterday? Like, what's the protocol for handling this?
The protocol is enough officers as we need to keep it safe. We want to make sure that the demonstrators are safe walking through the streets of the city of Cleveland, and we want to make sure we have enough officers to respond if things turn otherwise. So it's based on those commanders on the ground and what they think is necessary to ensure both of those things.
Chief, in the wake of Baltimore, some of the police officers pulled back to the perimeters and did not go in due to offensive crimes that was alleged. Have you seen any of that happening? If that were to happen in Cleveland?
No, we don't do that in Cleveland. No, our officers take care of business. I mean, they're paid to protect and serve. They're paid to go in harm's way. They just make sure they're cautious in that, and they make sure that they do things properly.
Chief,
Yes.
yesterday's protest about 6:15, when the mounted unit came in behind the officers who were standing about shoulder to shoulder, it looked as if those protesters were going to breach that security checkpoint. Was that what appeared to be happening?
To be honest, I didn't see the end of the protest because I was on my way someplace else. We had monitored up until the point it got down here to 9th and Lakeside. But our officers on the ground, our supervisors and commanders, they know when to bring in more officers, when to pull back, when to give protesters room. We constantly communicate with what we perceive to be the leaders of these marches and protests, and we kind of give them the do's and don'ts that will keep everybody safe. and we try to get them to comply when things start to, get a little bit either out of hand or unsafe for the general public. And if that happens, then we bring in additional resources and we try to make sure that people stay within bounds.
Chief,
Yes.
Just to clarify on the open carry question about how it was vetted upward, was that, did either you or the mayor ask for guidance on whether or not open carry should be suspended, or did that come from another source?
No, the conversation started in the Executive Steering Committee for the RNC, which is headed by the Secret Service. As part of that committee's duties, we had to assemble and vet all of the operations plans from the airspace security plan, dignitary protection plan, all the way down to the mass demonstration plan. It has to be vetted through that steering committee. And part of the conversation was about the open carry law in Ohio. We basically had conversations amongst ourselves, the legal team assigned to that committee, and then there's a legal subcommittee that took up that question and took it to Columbus and either met or talked to the legal staff in Columbus, and the determination was made that the governor did not have the power to suspend that particular law. Yes?
There was a report of protesters breaking windows near 12th and Euclid, maybe entering, exiting the building, and some arrests were made. Can you speak to that, if that actually was the case?
What do you mean,
Were there arrests?
right now or yesterday?
Yesterday.
No, we didn't have any property destruction, and again, we only had the one arrest yesterday. I thought you were telling me something that I didn't quite know about, because this thing is ringing while I'm up here. Yes, sir.
Is there what are the restrictions on what types of guns you can carry?
The law has no restrictions. It states handguns and rifles. All right? Anything else?
One last question for clarification. Yesterday, it appeared that the bicycle patrolmen were wearing padded gear, and a lot of people were commenting on social media saying it was riot gear. I believe those two are different, but could you please explain and clarify on that?
Well, just so everybody's clear, the city of Cleveland does not have riot gear. There's, from our standpoint, there is no such thing as riot gear. There's personal protective equipment for officers. It's not an offensive material or protection at all. It's defensive for the officers to make sure they're protected in the event that something's thrown at that officer. So we don't use the term riot gear at all. It's personal protective equipment. And some of the bike officers have, if you've ever seen motocross or BMX bike racing, where those participants wear sleeves that kind of have padding and things like that to protect them in the event they fall. Our officers do have that gear. Some of the officers yesterday were in reserve, kind of doing some stuff at another location. They were called out to assist in this protest. They actually had some of that gear on when they were called out, yes. All right?
Is any of that gear new to the city?
Yes, it is. I mean, we've just reinstituted a real bicycle unit for the city, and that's part of the gear that we purchased for the RNC.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.